Bill Gates was born William Henry Gates III on October 28, 1955 in Seattle, Washington. Gates began to show an interest in computer programming at the age of 13 at the Lakeside School. He pursued his passion through college, striking out on his own with his friend and business partner, Paul Allen. Gates found himself at the right place at the right time. Through technological innovation, kind business strategy, and aggressive business tactics, he built the world's largest software business called Microsoft. In the process, Gates became one of the richest men in the world. Bill Gates grew up in an upper middle class family with two sisters, Christina, who was older, and Libby, who was younger. Their father, William H. Gates Sr., was a promising, if somewhat shy, law student when he met his future wife, Mary Maxwell. She was an athletic, outgoing student at the University of Washington, actively involved in student affairs and leadership. The Gates family atmosphere was warm and close, and all three children were encouraged to be competitive and strive for excellence. Bill showed early signs of competitiveness when he coordinated family athletic games at their summer house on Puget Sound. He also relished in playing board games, which Risk was his favorite, and he excelled at playing Monopoly. Bill had a very close relationship with his mother Mary, who, after a brief career as a teacher, devoted her time to helping raise the children and working on civic affairs and with charities. She also served on several corporate boards, including those of the First Interstate Bank in Seattle, founded by her grandfather, the United Way, and International Business Machines, which is called IBM. She would often take Bill along when she volunteered in schools and at community organizations. Bill was a voracious reader as a child, spending many hours poring over reference books such as the encyclopedia. Around the age of 11 or 12, Bill's parents began to have concerns about his behavior. He was doing well in school, but he seemed bored with withdrawn at times. His parents worried he might become a loner, though they still believed in public education. When Bill turned 13, they enrolled him at Seattle's Lakeside School, which is an exclusive preparatory school. He blossomed in nearly all his subjects, excelling in math and science, but also doing very well in drama and English. While at Lakeside School, a Seattle computer company offered to provide computer time for the students. The Mothers Club used proceeds from their school's rummage sales to purchase a teletype terminal for students to use. Bill Gates became entranced with what a computer could do and spent much of his free time working on the terminal. He wrote a tic-tac-toe program in basic computer language that allowed users to play against the computer. At Lakeside School, Bill met a friend named Paul Allen, who was there 2 years his senior year. The two became fast friends, bonding on their common enthusiasm over computers. Even though they were different, Allen was more reserved and shy, and Bill was feisty and at times combative. They both spent much of their free time together working on programs. Occasionally they disagreed and would clash over who was right or who should run the computer lab. On one occasion, the argument escalated to the point where Allen banned Gates from the computer lab. On another occasion, Gates and Allen had their school computer privilege revoked for taking advantage of software glitches to obtain free computer time from the company that provided the computers. After their probation, they were allowed back in the computer lab. They offered to debug the program. During this time, Gates developed a payroll program for the computer company the boys hacked into, and a scheduling program for the school. In 1970, at the age of 15, Bill Gates went into business with his pal Paul Allen. They developed Traffic-O-Data, which is a computer program that monitored traffic patterns in Seattle, and netted $20,000 for their efforts. Gates and Allen wanted to start their own company, but Gates' parents wanted him to finish school and go to college where they hoped he would work to become a lawyer. Bill Gates graduated from Lakeside in 1973. He scored a 1590 out of 1600 on the computer SAT test, a feat of intellectual achievement that for several years he boasted about when he introduced himself to new people. Gates enrolled at Harvard University in the fall, originally thinking of a career in law, but his freshman year saw him spend more of his time in the computer lab than in class. Gates did not really have a study regimen and said he could get by on a few hours of sleep, cram for a test, and pass with a reasonable grade. Gates remained in contact with Paul Allen, who after attended Washington State University for 2 years, dropped out and moved to Boston, Massachusetts to work for Honeywell. In the summer of 1974, Gates joined Allen at Honeywell. During this time, Allen showed Gates an edition of Popular Electronics magazine featuring an article on the Altair 8800 mini computer kit. Both boys were fascinated with the possibilities that this computer could create in the world of personal computing. The Altair was made by a small company in Albuquerque, New Mexico, called Micro Instrumentation and Telemetry Systems. Gates and Allen contacted the company proclaiming that they were working on a basic software program that would run the Altair computer. In reality, they didn't have an Altair to work with or the code to run it, but they wanted to know if MITS was interested in someone developing such software, which MIT was, and its president Ed Roberts asked the boys for a demonstration. Gates and Allen scrambled, spending the next 2 months writing the software at Harvard's computer lab. Allen traveled to Albuquerque for a test run at MITS. Never having tried it out on the Altair computer, it worked perfectly. Allen was hired at MITS, and Gates soon left Harvard to work with him. Much to his parents' dismay, in 1975, Gates and Allen formed a partnership they called Microsoft, a blend of microcomputer and software. Gates and Allen dropped a hyphen in less than a year with the word Microsoft because it started off on shaky footing. Through their basic software program for the Altair computer netted the company a fee and royalties, it wasn't meeting their overhead. Microsoft Basic software was popular with computer hobbyists who obtained pre-market copies and were reproducing and distributing them for free. According to Gates, later accounted only about 10% of the people using Basic in the Altair computer had actually paid for it. At this time, much of the personal computer enthusiasts were people not in it for the money. They felt the ease of reproduction and distribution allowed them to share software with friends and fellow computer enthusiasts. Bill Gates thought differently. He saw the free distribution of software as stealing, especially when it involved software that was created to be sold. In February of 1976, Gates wrote an open letter to computer hobbyists, saying that continued distribution and use of software without paying for it would prevent good software from being written. In essence, pirating software would discourage developers from investing time and money into creating quality software. The letter was unpopular with computer enthusiasts, but Gates stuck to his beliefs and would use the threat of innovation as a defense when faced with charges of unfair business practices. Microsoft wrote software in different formats for other computer companies, and at the end of 1978, Gates moved the company operations to Bellevue, Washington, just east of Seattle. Bill Gates was glad to be home again in the Pacific Northwest and threw himself into his work. All 25 employees of the young company had broad responsibilities for all aspects of the operation: product development, business development, and marketing. With his acumen for software development and a kind business sense, Gates placed himself as the head of Microsoft, which grossed $2.5 million in 1978, which Gates was only 23 years old. Between 1978 in 1981, Microsoft growth exploded and staff increased from 25 to 128. Revenue also shot up from 4 million to 16 million. In mid 1981, Gates and Allen incorporated Microsoft, and Gates was appointed president and chairman of the board. Allen was named executive vice president. By 1983, Microsoft was going global with offices in Great Britain and Japan, and with 30% of the world's computers running on its software. But 1983 also brought news that rocked Microsoft to its very foundation. Paul Allen was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. Through his career went into remission a year later with intensive treatment. Allen resigned from company the same year. Rumors abound as to why Allen left Microsoft. Some say Bill Gates pushed him out, but many say it was a life-changing experience for Allen, and he saw that there were other opportunities that he could invest his time in. Bill Gates stepped down from the day-to-day operations of Microsoft in 2000, turning over the job of CEO to college friend Steve Ballmer, who had been with Microsoft since 1980. He positioned himself as chief software architect so he could concentrate on what was, for him, the more passionate side of the business. He still remained chairman of the board. Over the next few years, his involvement with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation occupied much of his time, and even more of his interest. In 2006, Gates announced he was transitioning himself from full-time work at Microsoft to devoting more quality time to the foundation. His last full day at Microsoft was June 27, 2008. In February 2014, Gates announced that he would be stepping down as chairman of Microsoft in order to move into a new position as technology advisor. In addition to Gates' transition, it was reported that the longtime Microsoft CEO, Steve Ballmer, will be replaced by 46-year-old Satya Nadella.